Fresh off the press, Perth Now has published an article about a local butcher that is being slammed by the public because they are purchasing and murdering goats from a petting farm. Wow. So there is outrage, and I think rightfully so. I want to take a look at what people are saying and what the butchers themselves are actually saying to defend themselves here. Okay, so let's get into it. Swansea Street family butcher slammed after announcing it buys goats from petting farm. That is the title. And it reads, a Perth butcher is under fire for its shocking advertising of its paddock to plate offers, revealing the baby goats it is selling came straight from a petting zoo, not a farm. No, that's weird actually. A petting zoo, and then in the title it says petting farm. Anyway, in its social media promotion on Thursday afternoon, Swansea Street family butcher announced its baby goats were being bought, in quote, straight from the petting farm into our back door. I wonder if that means they're actually murdering the animals themselves. Butchers normally buy them from slaughterhouses, so maybe they're actually doing it themselves. They're not too far away from me, so maybe we could investigate that. I'm just kidding. Or maybe not. The Facebook post shows a photo of a live goat next to a rack of skinned goat carcasses, but it's the accompanying explanation that would truly horrify most children and no doubt some parents. I wonder if people knew what actually happened in slaughterhouses, because these people, they consume animals on a daily basis, I would assume, and they feed their children murdered animals. So do they not know what happens inside of farms and slaughterhouses via standard Australian practices? Probably not. I mean, the industry is very good at hiding that from people. So, in quote, ever been at a petting farm and wondered what these animals you're feeding taste like? The post read. I certainly haven't, because I don't go to petting farms anyway. As an animal rights activist, we disagree with the ethics of petting farms because most of these animals are actually bred in existence solely for the purpose to become a petting farm animal, for the entertainment of other humans, mostly children. And what happens when they are no longer cute and small? Well, they go to a slaughterhouse where they have their head chopped off for a needless meal. Well, now is your chance, straight from the petting farm into our back door. Bottle-fed baby goats, only $15 per kilo. While stocks last, see if love and endless cuddles does make your food taste better. What the fuck? That sounds so sadistic. Extremely sadistic. But it's ironic because most people like to think that their animals were cared for and loved and got little belly scratches every day before they're sent to a slaughterhouse. But when the animals do come from a petting farm where they do get belly scratches probably every day, they're more outraged. That is ironic. It is really ironic. So the owner of the Victoria Park butcher, Reagan Goddard, told Perth Now the goats were auctioned off from a WA petting farm and described killing animals for food as a mental thing. That was nothing out of the ordinary. A mental thing. I don't know what that even means, but okay. Nothing out of the ordinary. It's a little bit out of the ordinary because I don't think that most butchers are purchasing from petting farms, but as I said, most of these animals from petting farms are going into a butcher, so actually maybe they're right here. Maybe it's nothing out of the ordinary. So what are people outraged about? We like to offer a full paddock to plate journey. Quite the journey into a slaughterhouse, a murder factory, where they're going to experience immense fear. They're going to see their friends and family be murdered in front of them, heads chopped off, the smell of death. I mean, I've been to these places. It is fucking horrible. Quite the journey. Most of our following enjoy seeing the story behind each animal. Did what I just say sound like a good story or a bad story? Pretty bad story. It's like when you have a pet chicken and you kill it. They're not an it, they're not an object, they're someone. You kill them or he or her. It's a mental thing. It's nothing out of the ordinary. This whole mental thing again. I think I get it now. They're trying to say, what's the difference? If you would kill and eat a chicken and not bat an eye about it, but then you get outraged because someone purchased and murdered a goat from a petting farm, what's the difference? It's just your perception. In fact, it's cognitive dissonance because most people think that eating animals, farm animals, pigs, cows and goats and chickens and fish and all of them that come from a farm as being, well, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that in their heads. But when they come from a petting farm and they've been showed some ounce of love love. I don't think petting farm is actually a loving place, but it is better than a lot of these conditions that animals are kept in inside of Australian farms. They're really, really bad. If we're looking at pigs inside of gestation crates, chickens inside of cages, or even in the free range sheds, they're fucking horrible. They're living in their own shit, they're piss, they're confined, they're crowded. Really horrible places. Yeah, I think what they're referring to is cognitive dissonance here. Buying animals live is very common. It happens every week. Well, yeah, they have to be alive before you kill them. Anyway, some locals have commended the butcher's transparency, but others are aghast to the reality of what happens to the cute and cuddly animals they may have once pet, and appalled at the nature of meat advertisement. Yeah, I would be aghast at what happens to cute and cuddly animals. If you watch slaughterhouse footage for yourself, such as the documentary Dominion, which is all Australian footage of what goes on inside of Australian farms and slaughterhouses, that's the reality, and it is horrible. It is horrible. So if you haven't seen where animals go when you pay for animal products, take a look, because the reality might be something you'd be aghast to, and it might be enough of a reason for you to actually consider going vegan. Where do people think meat comes from? So detached from reality. That's actually the best way to consume meat, knowing where they come from, one Facebook user commented. Look, this person is being consistent here because most people like to think that animals that they purchase from the butcher or animal products such as dairy and eggs and even fish, they all come from a reality where they're treated well and kindly and there's no pain when they die, or if there is pain, it's tried to be minimized and all, etc., etc. But the reality is that that's not the case. And people always talk about backyard farming or farming where they're treated well and then they're murdered and that being better. Well, this is a scenario as close to that fictional reality that people make up, but now they're outraged. Again, the irony, the hypocrisy. Perhaps petting farm meat does taste better. At least they've been loved and cared for. Well, they're slaves. I don't know if that makes them taste better, but again, does taste a justification to murder somebody when you don't have to? Whether they come from a petting farm or not. I'm not a vegetarian, but hey, who was... Oh, get out of the way. Get out of the way. What the fuck? I'm not a vegetarian, but hey, who was the sensitive genius that thought this marketing story was a good idea? They're literally giving you what you want to hear. They're literally telling you that these animals will come from a petting farm where they were loved and cared for, etc., etc., but now you're angry. What type of reality would you like to see that makes you comfortable and want to buy the bodies of these animals? A fake reality. You want to be ignorant to the truth and you want to think that these animals came from somewhere that is actually humane, where they're treated with compassion and benevolence, but there is no such reality. There is no such thing. So what do you want? What are you even asking for? Maybe you should be vegan and not vegetarian, because vegetarians pay for the murder and abuse and torture and confinement and kidnapping of babies and murder of babies every time they purchase dairy products and egg products. So maybe you should go vegan. Disgusting way to advertise. I love meat, but this is just wrong. Again, another person that would prefer advertisement that is completely false to allow them to continue in their ignorance towards what actually happens in slaughterhouses. Mr. Goddard agreed his post had received mixed reaction, but said many of his customers wanted to learn more about their food. Look, I don't blame him. If people want to know where their food comes from to give them some false reassurance, he's supplying you with that, and you're all angry. I think I bought 14 goats, but I mainly bought them because my sister wanted a couple of friendly ones for her house. Wait, who's this? So there are still 2 friendly... they kept 2 as companion animals and murdered the rest. Maybe they shouldn't be bred into existence in the first place here. Now, one could say, well, they should all become companion animals. Well, they all should have went to a sanctuary. But at the first place, they shouldn't have been bred solely for human entertainment inside of a petting farm, and then to be sent into a murder factory where they have their head chopped off. I think that that's the reality that should be happening here. Not one where we have to enslave them and then decide their fate. And often that's going to revolve around making money for business owners. They're not commodities, they're individuals. They all deserve to live. They've experienced pain and suffering and love. So we should grant them the right to not have their neck slit for a needless meal, let alone be enslaved for your entertainment. If you're outraged by all of this too, I think the only solution for you is to go vegan. But let's take a look at some of the comments here. KDK, one day we should be able to go to a petting farm and choose which goat we want our next cut of meat from. It's no different to choosing the fruit we want by having a feel of them first. Oh my god, KTK, what the fuck? There's a big difference between choosing an animal to chop their head off and then choosing a fruit to slice up. Fruit aren't sentient, they don't have a central nervous system, so there is no harm inflicted on a fruit when you eat them. But an animal, on the other hand, are sentient, alive, and they do feel pain and suffer, as I just said. What does, oh, here's one about Tash. What does Tash do when she has a cockroach, mouse, mosquito, blowfly, lawn bottle festation? I don't know what I don't know what a lawn bottle festation is. I could look it up, but I can't be bothered. I can tell you what she does, and she doesn't murder any of them because we don't have infestations of any of those animals because we avoid them coming into the house altogether. As a vegan, we avoid putting ourselves in situations as much as practically possible where we would have to ever exploit or murder somebody. Animals, in some cases, are going to die, whether intentionally or non-intentionally, but there's a big difference between breeding animals into existence solely to enslave them, commodify them, and then consume them when it's completely unnecessary. Big difference. Hayden R, not veggie, but this is beyond the pale. Why not bring your kids and see if they can pick out their favorite goat from the zoo? Mine, you should be tender with all those brats patting them. That's disgusting. That's fucking disgusting. Geezer S. When I was a young fella, petting meant something else entirely, but that was in the days when we still had drive-in theatres. Wait, what? I thought our meat just came from the fridge department at Woolies. Sarcasm, but that's how most people think. I don't think a lot of people really want to look at the reality of where their flesh actually came from. Like, they don't want to know who the individual was, they would rather live in ignorance. Danny LG, the butcher is right when he says it's a mental process, so to speak, that throws people off who consume animal products. It's so different when you see it alive, again, they're not something, and then see it in a tray in a fridge cabinet with all those lovely wording and price tag. That is very true. So many people just not in touch with reality. Again, completely agree. Meat packed in a lovely tray where the label looks just so good for many. Seriously, people must know that animals were alive before they ended up in trays with a price label at the stores. They should have a huge monitor screen in the meat sections. That's where people can see what they are buying for their next meal. I love that idea. I think we should have CCTV cameras inside of slaughterhouses and farms, and they should be playing inside a supermarket so people can see exactly what they're buying. I think it's a fucking great idea. Good on you, Danielle. The reality check came along in my Sicilian family when I was 5 years old and just accidentally happened to see my dad kill the pig, as the Italian saying goes, which was not a pretty sight and totally freaked me out. Yeah, if I saw an animal being killed as a child, which I did, I saw footage on the internet of earthlings when I was about 10 years old. It never left me. But I always told myself that I actually had to consume animals to be healthy. I didn't know that you could be healthy without doing that. But it stuck with me because as children, we're all against animal abuse. Specifically children, we think that it's wrong to treat animals that way, for the majority anyway. I've met some horrible children. And even as adults, we all say that we're against animal cruelty and abuse. So when we see animal cruelty and abuse, it sticks with us. And then it's just about aligning your actions with your morals and living vegan. Because you don't have to be paying for that. If you're disgusted by it, just go vegan. I'm grateful that food was raised in a happy and healthy environment. Meat comes from an animal, not a plastic tray. Let's be sensible, it's nature. We eat to survive. Meat animals ensure our survival. No, they don't. You don't have to eat animals in order to survive. You can thrive as a vegan. Oh, it's nature. This is just an appeal to nature fallacy. Animals do horrible things in nature. They rape one another. They eat each other's children. They eat their own children at times. We should not be getting our ethics from nature. We should do what is morally considerate and respects the rights of animals when you don't have to be abusing, exploiting, and murdering them in the first place. Oh, here's another one about Tash. When people say Tash is a serial pest, keep it up, girl. The animals need someone on their side. Yes. The women who protested for a vote were serial pests. They got a result. Serial pests in quotation marks, I think she's saying. Most humans care about themselves until it affects them personally. How would they like it if someone were eating a dog or a cat? There would be outrage. What's the difference? Some laughing reactions. That's very true. People would be outraged. What is the difference? And people are outraged in this scenario, but they're not outraged by slaughterhouses in general and the farms conditions in Australia anyway. We should all be outraged by animal abuse and murder regardless. Get over it. Meat is meat. Animal meat comes from an animal somewhere in the wild or a petting zoo. Same result fills the gap. Growing up in Riverton of European parents, my parents kept an unfriendly goat and rabbit. Rabbits always went missing and unfriendly goats wasn't around too long. Came back from school and unfriendly goat was being carved up on the dinner table by parents and the nonnas. But didn't scar me for life. I have Watership down to thank for that. What the hell does that mean? Oh, ooh. Is this about animal exploitation? I should really look into that. I reckon this story presented at this time was presented here for the benefit of Tash, the queen of vegan protests. The story presented here was done so to warm the cockles of her heart. Have I got her, their pronoun correct? I love how Tash just lives rent-free in a lot of people's minds. Alright, I think I'm done. Sicko psychopaths. I was just about to say I think I'm done with the comments, but someone said sicko psychopaths. Now, people get so pissed off when I call people psychopaths because they don't give a shit about the abuse of animals and they laugh at it. It is psychopathic by definition to do that. This person... Oh. I didn't read the name. It's Tash. Yeah. Nice one, Tash. I agree with you. I agree with you. Alright, I'm going to leave it here. At the end of the day, we shouldn't be exploiting, and I know I've said this, we shouldn't be exploiting and enslaving animals solely to be murdered for their flesh or for our entertainment inside of petting farms. We shouldn't be breeding them into existence at all. If you're outraged at this, if you're outraged at goats coming from a petting farm and then being sent to a murder factory and then sold on a butcher, why aren't you outraged at every other animal that goes through the exact same experience, but if not much worse? Much worse conditions in Australian farms. Again, align your beliefs with your actions by going vegan and not exploiting anyone anymore. It's that simple. Thank you for watching. I haven't asked people to do this before, but if you could subscribe to my channel, I would appreciate that, and I'm going to try and make more videos like this in the future.